Are there any comments from the public? And I have two names here. Any other comments?
Yeah.
John, yeah.
I'm John Taylor, president of Mud 66 and director-elect. First, I'd like to thank our departing board members, Larry Copeland and Alton Wicker, for their 20 and 12-year respectively of dedicated service to the residents of Mud 67. As a resident, I am confident that our excellent water, sewer, and stormwater services were partly due to your efforts on our behalf, and I thank you. That said, the voters on May 4th election have elected to move forward with 2 new board members. Currently, this month's agenda places important future items such as the draft 2025 Woodlands Division budget and the Freeze and Nickel NPV analysis in position before the new board members are installed. As such, I urge this board to canvass and install the new office immediately after today's consent agenda. Specifically, a request that agenda items 13 through 20 be moved forward and immediately follow agenda item number 7. As resident-focused candidates, we pledge our constituents better transparency, improved communications, and enhanced project and financial oversight. I can assure this board that your 2 newly elected board members are eager to begin working with the incumbent board members on these important issues in the manner pledged to our residents. Thank you again to our 2024 voters for your support. And finally, thanks again to Mr. Copeland and Wicker for their years of service.
I am Steve Riggs, Director-elect. Firstly, I wanted to thank the voters for Mud 67 for electing me, and I pledge to serve the residents to the best of my ability. And secondly, similar to what Mr. Taylor said, I wish to acknowledge, thank Directors Copeland and Wicker for their many years of service to Mud 67. As director, my goal will be to work with the fellow directors as well as the staff from the Woodlands Water and SJRA to provide cost-effective oversight, to manage our water resources and maintain the current high-quality water and service that they now enjoy, thanks in part to you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the floor? Any adjustments? Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
About item 3.
You want, he did that.
I got it.
You want to pull anything? Paul?
Okay. I had a comment on page 4, item 16, where it talks about the refund back to the MUDs. I'd like that to show the Woodlands MUDs because there are other MUDs involved.
On that note, something that I can report on page 6, if you want to see where that went, that credit is on page 6 at the top under other revenue in the revenue section, the 316,058. Your share was 315,998,1449. That's where that credit went. And it is in your April financials.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
A request has been made to move items 13 through 17, 16. Is there any objection?
I mean, just clarification from the attorney, is it up to the president of the board to make adjustments to the agenda if they would like to do so?
Exactly. Yes, sir.
I don't have any objection.
Okay. We'll move item 13
Just two.
through 16,
Through 20.
13 through 20, huh?
Yeah.
Proceeding to item 13. Supplemental agenda in English and Spanish to canvass the returns of the director's elections held on March 4th, 2024.
May 4th.
Thank you. And adopt an order declaring the results of the director's election.
If the board is agreeable, I can go ahead and cover this item along the remainder of the items for the director election up through 20. Go through that. All right, so the first one here is item 13 to canvass the results of the election. We did receive the official results from Montgomery County, who conducted the election on the district's behalf. I'll go through and read the final election results. Larry Copeland, 101 votes. John Baylor, is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you.
229 votes. Steve Briggs, 237 votes. Tom Buffa, 2 votes. Stuart Schroeder, 96 votes. So there were 2 positions up for election. The top 2 vote getters and who have won the election are John Thaler and Steve Briggs. Those are our results, and we need to canvass, adopt the order canvassing the results of the election.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, next item is to accept the qualification statements, bonds, oaths of office, affidavits of current directors, and elections not to disclose for the newly elected directors. So the process we need to follow here is for me to go and administer the oath to the new directors. Once the oath has been administered to both directors, the current board needs to take action to accept the documents under item number 14. Once the current board takes action on item 14, then the new directors are seated and will participate in the remainder of the board meeting.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Is there 5 of us or 7 of us at that point?
Through item, there will only be 5, will only ever be 5. So through item 14, it'll be these 5. Starting on item 15, it'll be, the new directors.
Okay. So what do we do? The oath?
You will receive a plaque. Party gift.
Parting gift.
You told me to go watch.
It didn't come in. It's still on. Lay away.
Very late.
Y'all will switch seats. You and Larry will switch seats with John and Steve. So they'll come up here. Y'all will go out there. All right. You ready for the oath? Who wants to go first? Go ahead. Yeah. I administer the oath at the end. You agree? Say, I do or I will. Raise your right hand. You, Steve Briggs, solemnly swear or affirm that you'll faithfully execute the duties of the office of Director of Montgomery County MUD number 67 of the state of Texas, and will to the best of your ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state, so help you God.
I will.
Congratulations. Thank you. Sir.
Do you have a wife? She does not want any more pictures.
Or anything to do with
Nice. Or me. It's only been 50 years.
Raise your right hand. Do you, John Thaler, solemnly swear or affirm that you'll faithfully execute the duties of the office of Director of Montgomery County MUD number 67 of the state of Texas, and will to the best of your ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and this state, so help you God.
I will.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, we are ready to take action. Yes, sir.
Now, I want to make a few comments regarding the directors that are leaving.
Take action
Is now the time to
Yes,
do
before
that?
we
Well,
take action on 14.
personally, Larry and Alton, thank you very much for your service. I've worked with y'all primarily in a staff director position, but also here as a former MUD director with you. And I just want to offer my sincere appreciation and thank you for your years of service.
Thank you.
And also on behalf of the board and WWA, I also wanted to offer to both of you these plaques that we had made. I'd like to read them aloud for each of you. They both said the same thing, but our sincere thank you and appreciation for exceptional leadership and dedicated service to Montgomery County Municipal Utility District number 67. Larry, I think your start date was May of 2004, right? Yes. Through today, and then Alton was May of 12. Is that right? Thank you both very much for your service.
We still get the full pay today, right?
You sure can. Sure can.
Nice, thank you.
All right, so we do need to take action on item number 14.
You want me to conduct that?
Well, the current directors.
I'll make
take
a
the vote
motion
on
to
this.
approve.
I'll second.
Vote on this.
We have a motion and a second.
All those in favor say
Aye.
aye.
All right, very good.
I'll listen.
I went wrong.
It only goes one. There you go.
Thank you. I guess I'll leave.
I don't like your.
Why
not? It's too much work.
I guess somebody has to sit here.
Yes. I mean,
Congratulations.
All right, so next item number 15, election of officers to the board. So we do have a vacancy at president and then assistant secretary. The way we handle this is to go through each of the officer positions. We consider nominations. If there's only one nomination, then we can have a vote by on that single nomination. If there are multiple nominations, then we have to conduct a vote for that, and we can handle that either by a voice vote. I can go around and ask, who you vote for in the nomination, or we can do it by ballot. We do it by ballot. It's not overly formal. I basically tear up a sheet of paper and hand each of y'all a piece, and y'all write your name, your support on it, and fold it up and hand it to me, and I'll go ahead and tally votes. If we have multiple nominations, how do y'all want to handle the vote? By voice vote or ballot vote?
I like
raising the hands myself. That way everybody out there knows what we're doing.
Raising the
it's
hand.
very good.
Yeah.
And raising the hand.
Yes.
Could I have some questions about the process? I'm new to this, okay? One, what does the secretary do?
Secretary signs, well, they sign minutes, they sign most of the documents. They also attest to the secretary, to the signature of the, to the president. I'm sure there's other ancillary duties, but on a day-to-day basis, that's the main thing that the secretary does.
And then during the nomination process, is there any conversation about the quality of the candidates, what they'd like to talk about themselves or?
There can't be, I mean, there's not an overly formal process to that. So that's up to the board, how y'all want to handle that. There can be discussion. I think there could be discussion.
I know one of the. Oops.
Totally turned.
Yeah, one of the disadvantages I have, I know Steve because I pretty much lived with him for the last 6 weeks. But these guys, I only know from seeing a little bit on video. I was wondering is there an opportunity for each of us to say something about ourselves so we know who we're voting for and nominating?
I think, we can certainly, on a normal vote process, there's, typically when it's not a nominating process, you have a motion, second, you have additional discussion, and then you take the vote. But we can have, if the board would like to have discussion on the nomination, on the nominees before the vote, we can certainly do that. That's a discretion.
I don't have any objection. But there was something I do want to clarify and emphasize. I think you just said, this is not a typical make a motion, second it, and
Correct,
then vote.
correct.
This is, every individual can nominate either someone or a slate. Can you nominate yourself if you want to for a
You can.
position?
Technically, you can.
So you can nominate yourself or anyone for any of these
But you
positions.
have to have a majority vote. So,
Yeah.
you know, if we end up having, you know, 3 nominees, then what I would say is we go through, figure out who the top 2 are, and then we have another vote.
Oh, just like the sheriff. All right.
So but we'll, you know, kind of approach it as it goes. So start with president. Do we have a nomination for president?
I'd like to nominate Alan Fritchie.
Have any other nominations?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Steve Briggs.
Okay. Do we have any other nominations? Okay, we have 2 nominations. Do y'all want any discussion before we take the voice vote or show of hands?
I'd like to hear, I don't know Mr. Ritchie. I know nothing about him. I'd like to hear a little bit, if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind. I've been a resident of the Woodlands for 25 years. I've served on this board for 12. I served on the 386 board in Harris County and the Woodlands piece of 386. When there were no residents there for about 10 years. I served on MUD Water Control District 91 in Harris County for 18 years when my kids were growing up. So I've held every position you can hold on these boards. And my background is I went to the University of Pennsylvania, Wharton School, majored in accounting, and retired for about 15 years. That's enough. I have a wife and 3 kids.
The best, yeah.
They all but one family lives in the Woodlands. One family does live in MUD 67. So that's my background.
Would you like to hear something? Steve Briggs, I've lived in the Woodlands 22 years. My background education is chemistry and a master's in chemical engineering. I worked in the oil industry for 40 years for ExxonMobil and retired in 2017. And in that time, while I haven't been part of any water business here, but in those 40 years, I've held a number of positions in the oil and with Exxon, many of which were in business analysis for large projects and such. So that's what I'm bringing to the meeting.
All right, we'll go ahead and call the vote. I think, do we want to go through on how do you want to do it on a voice vote or?
Raise your hand.
Raise your hands, right? That's fine.
Raise your hand.
Keep it quick.
All right, then we'll go with first nomination was for Alan. All those in favor of Alan as board president?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. 3, Steve, 2, okay, Alan has been elected as president. So we'll move on to the next item, which is the next position, which is vice president. We do have a vacancy there. Alan was previously vice president. Do we have a nomination for vice president?
Nominate Jim Stinson.
Okay. Do we have any other nominations for vice president?
Okay, Steve Briggs.
Any other discussion on the nominations before we take the vote?
I do. We go ahead. We heard Cornelia. Yeah.
I have been an employee here at the Woodlands Water up until October of last year for over almost 30 years. A registered engineer, civil engineering background, water and wastewater emphasis. I was appointed to fill a vacant position on this board several months back. And that's a summary.
Thank you for that. I guess I do have a comment about this. Am I allowed to make comments? Mr. Briggs was a leading vote getter in the 2024 election. He was elected to this board. Mr. Stinson, as you say, you were appointed. You were appointed by 4 votes, 2 of which are no longer here. So I don't know how it feels, but we ran a strong campaign. The voters were very clear, 70-30 on what the message was. And I think if this board is receptive to hearing the residents, then Mr. Briggs should be the vice president of this group.
discussion on nominations? If not,
I would just also say I appreciate your perspective. But you know, the voter turnout was really relatively low considering the number of registered voters in MUD 67. And election, when you win an election, it's invigorating and exciting. I understand that. And but I think at some point we need to get beyond that and get to the people's business.
Well, that's exactly the point.
Couldn't agree more.
I agree as well. And the turnout is the turnout. It's the people who decided to vote and thought it was important spoke. In fact, as I understand it, 4 years ago, the turnouts were like 30 or 40 people. So it's
No,
definitely
that's
improving.
not true.
Okay, 4 years ago, what was it?
It wasn't 4 years ago, it was 2 years ago.
I said 4 years ago.
4 years ago, I don't know.
go ahead.
Yeah.
But okay, my point is that no matter the turnout, that is the results of the election. And if this board is supposed to be representing the MUD 67 and the residents here, I think there should be a voice from the residents on who chairs it.
Go ahead, call vote. Jim Stinson, Vice President.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
Steve Briggs.
Aye.
Move on to Jim Stinson, elected Vice President. Move on to Secretary Treasurer. Do we have Paul Martin currently serves in the position of Secretary Treasurer. Do we have any nominations to alter the current position of Secretary Treasurer?
Oh, no, he's doing a wonderful job. I nominate Paul.
Except continuing to serve in that position.
Yes.
Okay, then we don't need to take a vote. We'll leave that position as it is. Jim Stinson, currently serving as Assistant Secretary, so we have a vacancy there. We do always recommend that we have 2 Assistant Secretary Treasurers in the event the Secretary is not able to serve. John, Steve, are y'all willing to accept nominations?
Oh, Steve, I think Steve would be wonderful.
I'll do that.
We have a nomination
Nominate Steve.
for Steve. Any other nominations? Call the vote. Unanimous consent. All those in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Okay, that takes us through item number 15. Moving on to item number 16. Appointment of trustee and alternates to the Woodlands Water Board of Trustees. So currently, we have Paul Martin as the district's trustee. Larry Copeland was first alternate, so we have a vacancy there. Alan Fritschke is currently serving as second alternate for the new directors. I know you all attended the trustee meeting. We have one member from each board who's a primary trustee. We have backups in the event that they're not able to serve. First alternate serves in the event the primary is unable. Second alternate serves if the first alternate is unable. So pretty self-explanatory. Do we have any nominations to for the position of primary trustee for MUD 67?
I'd like to nominate Paul.
Any other nominations?
Nominate John Taylor.
Any further discussion on the nominations?
Yeah, once again, I'm going to point out the election, and Paul's been there quite a while. I think everybody respects Paul quite a bit. I understand that his neighborhood, the people on the board, the trustees. It's time for a change. The residents have spoken. It's time to change. There's a lot of technical projects going on, and when I watched 18 months of this MUD meeting, 67, before the election, I reviewed them all, and this group in particular has been very weak in vetting projects and financial oversight. And I think we need a change at the trustee level, and so I would like you to vote for me.
Any other discussion on the nominations? Not call the vote. Those in favor of Paul Martin as district trustee?
Aye.
Aye.
All those in favor of John, trustee? Okay, Paul elected as trustee. First alternate, we have a vacancy there. Do we have a nomination for the first alternate?
I nominate Alan Fritschke.
Okay, we have any other nominations for first alternate?
John Taylor.
Okay, any additional discussion?
Sure. I mean, it's clearly 3-2. I expected that. I think it's embarrassing that a board can't look at the quality of the candidates and make an election based on that as opposed to good old boy networks. And that's exactly what we ran against. So I appreciate that. And that's how we'll conduct the next 2 years of business. I understand. Thank you.
Additional discussion. Call the vote. All those in favor of Alan as first alternate.
Aye.
Saying aye. And all those in favor of John as first alternate.
Me.
Alan is elected as first alternate. Second alternate, we have a vacancy there at second alternate. Do we have nominations for second alternate?
I'd like to nominate Steve Briggs.
Steve,
I second it.
okay. Do we have any other nominations for second alternate? If not, vote by unanimous consent. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries. Got through that. Move on to next item, the district registration form. That's an administrative document that has to be updated with the TCEQ to reflect that we have new directors, what their officer positions are, and what the terms of office are for our new directors. Do we have a motion to authorize following that updated form with the TCEQ?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we need to update the local government officers list to reflect our two new directors. John and Steve, the purpose of that list is to have, the legislature requires us to have every district to have the list. The list is comprised of all the board members as well as the district's investment officers, which are your general manager and your accounting manager. That list is made available to vendors in the event that they're looking to do business with the district. They can pull that list, determine whether they have any potential conflicts with anyone on that list, and also determine whether they need to make any conflict disclosure filing. So we need to update the list to include both of you. We have a motion to approve item number 18.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 19, training requirements related to the Texas Open Meetings Act and Texas Public Information Act. So John and Steve, in your materials, there's a memo there that talks about open records and open meetings and Public Information Act training. 2 one-hour sessions that you need to complete on the Attorney General's website. There's a link to that website in the memo. Once you've completed both one-hour training courses, you need to either print or download those certificates of completion and send those to Shelley, the district secretary. She will, or Woodlands Water Secretary, she will put that in your file, and that will be your evidence of completing that training requirement. You do need to complete the training requirement within 90 days. You can see it today. I don't anticipate you're going to wait that long, but just put that out there. And if you're curious for more information about open meetings and public information, the Attorney General's office does put out a handbook that they update every few years, and they actually updated it in 24. So if you're interested in that kind of thing and want to learn more, they have those handbooks available online. No actions necessary on 19. 20, conflicts disclosure reporting requirements memo. Again, John and Steve, there was a memo in your packet that had some check the box yes or no items. If you think either now or in the future that you might have a potential conflict for some reason, visit with me about it offline. And that's always a very facts and circumstances specific analysis, and we can determine whether there's anything you need to do to make a filing or take any other action related to potential conflict. Okay. No actions necessary on item number 20. So with that, Alan, I will go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Okay. We'll return to the regular agenda, item 8 for Stephen. Regular monthly SJRA Woodlands Division report, including updates on operations, projects, and public outreach.
Before we proceed, can I say one thing? I want to thank the board for moving the agenda for us. There's a lot of things coming up on the future here, and as you just pointed out, and I appreciate you doing that. So thank you.
Chris?
So good afternoon. My name is Chris Meeks. I am the Utility Enterprise Manager for the River Authority. That title means I manage the Woodlands Division, water and wastewater services there, as well as the GRP division, which is the surface water that's delivered to the Woodlands Division and another 100 or so entities in the area. Our report begins on page 20 and runs through page 40. As you go through that report, if you have any questions, let me know. Everything was normal. There were no violations, nothing out of the ordinary. As you'll see in that report, we show the water blend ratio for the month. What the fiscal year to date is versus what the budget was. Go through the water loss, comparison of groundwater versus surface water. Talk about preventative maintenance, infrastructure maintenance, as well as a healthy recap of the projects, the budget, the funding, invoice to date, as well as the current status of those projects. Yes, sir.
Is it better to ask you questions as you go through the pages or to wait till you're done?
So normally I just ask if you have any questions, so I don't waste everybody's time. I was just trying to give a quick overview. So
That's why I'm asking.
yeah, at any point would be fine by me. So if you have questions.
Yeah, I'm sure you know all this stuff. Is that okay with you guys if I ask questions or? Okay, page 21. What, you mentioned the loss and now you guys are talking about, what's the cost of the loss? How do you calculate, how would I calculate cost so I know how significant it is?
So, yeah, that's a good question. We calculated based off of basically the 4.8% of what was produced for that month. And so if you take, for example, you look over here at the surface water, the 240,181 and then the 196,934, right? So that give or take 441,000 or so.
Yep.
Add that together, multiply it by 4.8%. That figure that you come up with, you divide that by 1,000 and multiply it by the wholesale rate of $2.78.
Thanks.
As well as the surface water conversion fee currently at $3.20.
Thank you.
So on that, keep in mind though, that the water loss in the state of Texas to be below 5% is unheard of. Generally, most entities are 10+%. City of Houston, for example, is an easy 20%. So you can always try to get better, but at some point in time, you're always going to have loss in the system. That loss, as you can see on the top right, is broken up into accounted for and unaccounted for. Accounted for is generally stuff that we know of when we have to flush a well, flush a tank, something that we have metered to the ground, if you will. And then on the unaccounted for, that is considered also to a certain degree fires, water theft, if you do have any, water main breaks, so on and so forth. So
And the units in that table under monthly are those gallons?
under monthly,
Monthly accounted for water loss? That you couldn't.
yes, sir, good point. You put a qualifier on there to state that it is gallons.
I just, because I don't know anything, so I'm gonna keep, you're gonna, all these guys know it. I'm sure Jim knows this inside and out. All right, thank you. Can I keep going? Table 3 on page 22. And I like the table a lot. Does each of these line items have an associated cost?
Are we on the infrastructure section?
I'm on page 22, yes, infrastructure maintenance.
There is a cost associated with it.
Is it hard to add that to the table so that we know the significance of what we're looking at?
It could be potentially, not entirely, I guess, hard, but maybe time wise, because this report we try to get out, and so this is April, so we may not have the true cost, like the first one, the AC water main break. We may repair it as an emergency, but we might not get that actual invoice for 30 days past the report. What I can do is, I'm sure I can shorten some of these up, and if I have a cost, I don't mind putting a cost there, so y'all can see what the estimated cost was.
Yeah, because I'm not smart enough to know what's valuable and what's not, right? If you start helping me, then I can get smart. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Some of these projects too, they are actually in another part of the table. So if we have those costs there, we'll bring them over.
No, I appreciate it. Okay.
So like, people are thinking of questions, after the Woodlands Division report, okay, the monthly operations report. Beginning on page 33 is the GRP monthly operations report. So this report typically goes to the GRP review committee that meets the fourth Monday of every month. And so this report, the GRP one, has not been given to GRP for the current month. So that's why GRPs will always be basically 2 months behind. But that is that report, so you can see their financials and water usage here.
And page 25 on this table.
Yes, sir.
Each of the projects, I think it's a good breakdown. Each of the projects, how do I find more information about them? Is there someplace in the Google Drive? Is there a report? Where do I learn about the project so I can get up to speed?
So well, there's two things. So one is going to be on the Google Drive. There's a document called the 10-year project plan.
Okay.
Last one was presented in March, and generally every March for the past at least 14 years I know of, there's going to be one there. The second item though, that is a little bit more, okay, that project plan will tell you the cost, the breakdown, construction, everything else, details, description of what it is, where it is, all that good stuff. We're also going to be providing a flash drive to all directors that has a lot of information on there that we've talked about over the last 2-3 years. So everything dealing with the wastewater reclamation facility, 1,000+ pages of documents, finances, everything else, AC water lines, the project plan, the contracts, all the mud contract supplementals, all that should be provided by the next mud meeting. So that should also help with a lot of information.
Oh, that's good. So we'll be getting that.
By next month.
Oh, okay. And then is there a reason this is not in landscape format so I can use 2 pages instead of 10?
Yeah, it goes kind of back and forth, and that's,
All right.
When we-
I figured someone raised that before. I just go, oh.
yeah, there's something in the conversion. We actually have it in landscape. But if you go to the GRP monthly operations report, some of those were in landscape, but for the scanning and transition, like page 33 is landscape, but when it gets put into the packets on portrait. And so we try to get back to portrait to get more.
I understand. I understand. And the last thing on that table, third page 31 on the bottom right, there's a bunch of codes and I don't know where they go to. Green and yellow and S and D.
Okay, and so those go through various areas in the report as you're going through. For example, the bottom 2 are green and yellow. When a project is brand new and it has not been on the report, we want to draw your attention to it, so we'll highlight it
In this table, that'll show up.
in this table.
Okay, because I didn't see any of those. Okay.
Yeah, there were none just recently. Sometimes we'll actually, you are right. So we changed this report a couple months ago. The phase used to have a number, have blood of the C's and everything.
Okay.
Now we actually spell the words out.
You made me look for it.
Well, you paid attention. I appreciate that. Over the last 2 years, this report's changed quite a bit because of questions.
Okay,
I do
thanks.
appreciate it. Any other questions?
Yeah, I guess I'm not, this is like my lack of understanding. The Bear Branch drainage project is not yours. It's in the Woodlands water. Is that
So the Bear Branch Reservoir System being the dam and the actual drainage structure itself, it is part of the River Authority, but it's managed by the Lake Conroe Division. So
Oh.
I don't manage it, but I know a guy that does.
I just was wondering what I look for, because it's been a conversation in this meeting for quite a while, and it's important to the residents. I was curious. So it's somewhere else, I'll have to look for it somewhere.
It is.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that report is only Woodlands Division, only GRP Division under my management.
Perfect.
Anything else?
Thank you very much. I'm sorry to have so many questions.
Number 9, receive information from SJR and Freeze and Nichols regarding partial rehab net present value.
Dan will take this.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. First off, I'm Dan Hildebrand. I'm Technical Services Department Manager with the River Authority. So that's overseeing the engineering, construction management, inspection, and our GIS team. So with that, John and Steve, congrats on the election, being part of my directors here, and we're looking forward to working with y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So what I'm going to touch on is in your packet, pages 41, 42, and 43. This is a very small piece of 3 years worth of documents and discussion regarding wastewater strategic plan and the efforts associated with that. So we are going to be making those documents, all of them available to you, like Chris mentioned, on a flash drive. We're also going to have orientations to get everybody up to speed where we're currently at today. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities to ask additional questions too. So don't feel like you got to get them all out today, but we appreciate any questions you have. So where this started was back in March, we presented our 10-year project plan. With that, there was a couple slides regarding schedule for the wastewater treatment facility number 1 replacement. And we talked about what would it look like if replacement was delayed by 18 months or 3 years. And with that, there was 2 columns of infrastructure that were listed that said, hey, if this is postponed after 18 months, we feel we would have to replace these items. If it was postponed further, the completion and startup of a new facility, we would have to address these other items in the second column, in addition to the first column. One of the main questions we got is, can you quantify that for us? And what would be the impacts, to help us try to determine if that's in the best interest of, the residents and the MUDs, or is it better to move forward as soon as possible with the replacement of the facility? So that discussion further went into the April trustee meeting. For the April trustee meeting, the trustees approved $50,000 for our engineering consultant, Freeze and Nichols, to further look at what would be a high-level cost estimate for those items, along with a net present value analysis to determine what is favorable. So with that, page 41 is essentially a table that is consistent with the items that were listed in the March presentation on those slides. There's two columns, the first two columns in blue. One is costs associated with items that if the project was delayed 18 months, a high level cost estimate for those.
This is extending 18 months beyond 2030, is that?
Good point. So the current schedule that we've laid out is a completion date, start up the new facility of 2030.
That's the end. When's time zero?
Time zero, essentially, that's what we're looking to get to now is to get a supplemental agreement with.
Time zero is today. Okay.
And to give you another milestone, we are looking to start construction in 2027. So you're looking at
Thank you.
kind of 3 years of design and then another approximately 3 years of construction.
Okay.
So this is not something that moved.
And so these costs are previous to 2027. These are, like you said, the next 18 months, those are the costs in the next 18 months.
No, so
Okay.
if construction completion date was extended beyond 2030 to say 2032.
Okay.
That 18 months, that ties to some discussion that the MUD directors had regarding funding for the project going to rollback elections, which would not be possible till November 2025. So that's where we didn't arbitrarily come up with an 18-month. So what the costs are here associated with the items would be if we knew that delay was coming, we would go ahead and start basically immediately looking at these items to do replacement because we feel they would be needed if that plant startup of the new facility was beyond that 18-month period.
Okay.
Okay?
Mhm.
Is that, am I making sense?
So, yeah, so,
Okay, yeah.
so what, but exactly, when did the first dollar get spent on this, in your spreadsheet, your analysis? That's, I guess, I didn't ask that clearly, maybe. In other words, this is a net present value, right? So there's time zeros now, and then there's a money starts going out. When does this money start going out?
So, yeah, so let me introduce someone else that can help. So this is David Munn. He's our project manager with Teresa Nichols. Him and his team led the analysis. So
Okay.
we brought him tonight, so if we got into the technical details, we have him here available. That's
I don't know so much the technical, I'm trying to just understand what the numbers are telling me, right?
I understand.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so in the net present value analysis, we assumed that design would start and be completed in the next 12 to 18 months. We would then go into bidding and construction of these improvements would start, I believe it was 2 years from now. So that would be in the year 2027.
First spends, okay, thanks.
The second column of costs there is essentially the same thought process as the 18 months, except additional items and costs associated with a delay that would be beyond that 18-month time frame. So that could be up to, let's say, 3 years.
Okay.
The other columns, source of cost, source type, those are essentially just notes, additional information on, how the consultant came up with those associated cost estimates.
Yeah. So. Got it. So after 18 months of spending, right? You did a lot of, you did some good, real construction. They're going to have useful lives. After 18 months, how much longer will this thing last?
I think that's going to depend on a certain component.
So what we assumed in the net present value analysis is consistent with typical industry benchmarks where mechanical equipment lasts about 20 years. The way I should phrase that is if that mechanical equipment remained in service, it could last up to 20 years. Some of these facilities would ultimately be redundant and taken out of service once the replacement plant is constructed. So for example,
Which is the underlying assumption, this entire thing, right?
that is
Yeah,
the
it is an
underlying.
assumption. Okay.
That is
Got it. And the same thing, then the same question with the second or the fourth column with the The longer time frame, same thing, right? If you do, you're gonna spend money and you're just delaying, you're with the assumption that you're gonna put a new plant of some kind, you're just buying, in essence, buying time.
Essentially, a term that's been thrown out is these would become sunk costs when the new facility comes online.
Oh, capital, yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah, I understand but these 2 pages, I mean, now we get to,
Okay.
now we get to one, I have no clue what you're doing.
So, and I may need David for that one, but bottom line, page 42, you got 2 total. One approximately 8.5 million, the other one's 33.2. So those 2 numbers are going to come back on the
So is that
the chart.
is that each of the terms, or is that a 33 in total for everything? In other words, is 8.5 and
8.5 is for the 18 month,
and then is a
And then the
33 inclusive of the 8 or
33.
separate?
is including both columns.
Okay, thank you. Go. Got it.
Page 43, there's gonna be a chart. Just to orient you with that, the x-axis is the number of years the full wastewater treatment facility replacement is delayed. So that is, again, beyond that year 2030 of, call it our baseline schedule, how long that new startup of a new facility would be. So you have 1.5 years that coincides with the 18 months, and then we have a 3 years. You got 2 red diamond dots. And those, the y-axis is cost in millions, to where those 2 numbers, the 8.5 and the 33.23, align with what was on that previous page. So what's the green line? So the green line, in basic terms, is that tipping point or break point of when costs, if say one of those red dots was to fall on that green line, it would be a neutral decision on where you go. If those red dots fall below the line or to the right of that green line, it would be favorable to do those rehabs or replacements. If the red dots fall above or to the left of that green line, it is not economically favorable to go forward with those rehab items. And it would be more advantageous and economically favorable to move forward with the replacement of the wastewater treatment facility in full. So that's the short synapse summary of that table. I'll let y'all ask.
I clearly understand the basis for the 2 diamonds. I don't understand, I have no understanding of the basis for the green line. And that's for me, that's a problem. I can't just accept a green line that's been drawn on the page. I need to know what's the data and the numbers, data behind that.
So I'll let David kind of prepare his response, but the first major assumption is going back to the facility master plan that we just completed for a new MBR wastewater treatment facility to be built adjacent to the existing one, that $289 million number that you have probably seen. So this is just pushing that replacement further out in time, which causes additional escalation on that number.
And when you push that project out, how did you credit your analysis with the money you weren't spending? What did you do?
So a couple questions I've heard. I'm going to save yours and come back to it.
I'll forget.
I'll remember it. Don't worry.
Okay.
I'm going to start with the first question, which is another explanation of just what that green line means. How did we calculate the green line? So I'm going to give a couple of examples. I'm going to purposely make them overly simplistic just to kind of get the conversation going. So the question is, how much should I invest in a partial rehab in order to defer the construction of the larger project? So let's say that the rehab to defer it by 10 years was really cheap. Let's say it only took you $1,000 of investment and you could defer, the replacement of the plant far out into the future, 10 years. That sounds like a great deal. That would be money well spent. On the flip side, though, if it was, you had to spend $100 million and it was only going to allow you to defer the construction by a year or so, that's a horrible deal, right? And so those 2 examples will kind of just help me explain that what the green line represents is for each year, like let's say you go out to the 5 years, come up to where the green line is, the green line's about at the $5 million mark, okay? That's saying that if the cost of your rehab to defer the plant by 5 years, if the cost of that rehab was only $5 million, then that's the break-even point, meaning you can decide by a coin flip, well, do you want to defer or do you not? It's going to be even money, either road you go down. If the rehab only cost $5 million to defer it by 5 years. Any money above that, like let's say you did your estimate and it was going to cost you $5 million and $100. Okay, well, now we're above that green line. So it's economically unfavorable. Let's say the cost of your rehab was only 4.9 million. Okay, now your project cost is below that green line. So that means that it is economically favorable. So the way we did that was we ran net present value analysis of the cost of just going forward with the replacement versus the cost of deferring the replacement and calculating what the break-even net present or the break-even cost would be for the rehab to get the exact same net present value.
When you're doing your net present value, I'm looking at the bottom of this second page on the table. It talks about $20-$30 and 4% escalation. Could you help me understand that with regards to your net present value calculation?
Sure. So you're at the bottom of the second.
All right, here.
I don't know what.
Where,
See, I guess in it's page 42 in the agenda
Yeah.
packet.
Yep. So whenever we escalate costs, typical engineering practice to escalate them to the midpoint of construction.
Here, I'm trying to understand the 4% escalation and why you're calling it $20-$30, right? So out there in 2030, there's an inflationary factor that you put on this estimate, I guess, and said, this is what the dollars are going to be. And
4% per year.
yeah. And then this thing, I guess it said something about 5%, 4%, 3%. No, on the other one. So I'm trying to understand where all these numbers are fitting in the NPV analysis.
So some of these numbers we spoke on, I believe, at the trustee meeting with the trustees on what to use for some of these assumptions.
I'm just trying to understand how, I'm not questioning the numbers you took. I'm trying to understand when you did your NPV analysis, where did those numbers fit in? And I'm going to go back to my original question. If you're not spending money until 2030, where's the benefit of not spending the money in your NPV calculation?
Right. So the discount rate is assumed to be the cost of borrowing the money. NPV is basically, okay, it is the kind of balance between, well, if you wait to build something, costs are going to go up because of escalation.
Just something you included, right?
But if you save that money, if you don't spend it today, there's got to be some benefit to you. If you are a private corporation, you can invest that money in a different project.
Okay.
And so you have to assume, well, what's my rate of return that I could possibly have if I invested it in a different project? For a public entity who cannot invest in the stock market or in a separate project, the typical approach is to assume that the savings is equal to the cost of borrowing the money, which is 3.5.
But you didn't borrow the money, and the cost of the cost of the residents, they have their money and they invested it. So I understand what you're telling me and what you're engineering and how you do that, but I'm not sure that fits for how the residents would feel about this analysis, right?
And so what we did was we ran what's called a sensitivity analysis, where we I'll use common terms. We played around with that number a little bit. What if we brought it up to 7%? What if we assumed that the discount rate is 7%? It still does not change the outcome of the story. The red dots are still above the green line.
So you've done all that work, but this is the point we Do you have a report that we can see the rest of that work, just so I understand it better?
I can provide it to Dan.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. No, I'm trying to get up to speed with you guys. There's a lot of stuff I had to do in a week. You know, I'm not complaining. I'm impressed with all the work you guys do.
And if you go back, you see the April trustee meeting, the question was brought up, well, what rate are you gonna assume? What discount rate, what inflation rate? It was decided, okay, we're gonna use an escalation of, I think, 4.5 to 5. And we're gonna assume an annual interest rate of 3.75. We wanted to be consistent in messaging. That's what everybody agreed to. That's what we're presenting. But we also anticipated somebody may ask questions exactly like you're asking. And so we did adjust it to see, well,
Sure.
okay, what if we get into some crazy times where escalation is really.
I wanted to see it too. I mean, you can't help yourself,
I'm
can
an
you?
engineer.
Exactly, I understand.
I did it.
Let me see what happens.
And it doesn't.
Sure. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
And this will be a document that we can compile and put on that flash drive that we're talking about. And it will be made available again.
Well, now it's gonna be 2 flash drives. All right.
That'll be one big one.
So for John and Steve, my name is Connie Curtis. I'm the Director of Technical and Operational Services for the San Jacinto River Authority. So I work with Dan and I'm over the engineering department, construction department, GIS, SCADA, IT. So what I'm going to do right now is just kind of call process. So we only have so much more time in y'all's meeting today. So we are more than happy to answer more questions that you all have on this topic and on plenty going forward. As we've noted, we've got orientations coming up and lots of time that we're going to get to spend together. So we look forward to partnering with you and chatting through. I think in summary, the green line is to the right or to the bottom of the red dots. And at the end of the day, our recommendation would be is to let's proceed forward and to not do the projects into the leg. That is in summary, the results of that analysis.
Okay,
Quick comment. Have y'all, Steve and John, have y'all had a chance to review the executive summary done back in February regarding the wastewater strategic plan?
I have not.
I would recommend-
Is that in the?
It's about a 20-something page summary that takes at least 12 to 14 months worth of work and combines it into a pretty good summry. And that, I think it would be helpful.
Favorably, is that in that Google Drive thing that we got sent, or is that something coming?
Currently on the Google Drive,
I don't know.
but
There's a lot
we'll be
on
putting that on the flash drive.
Okay.
That you'll be
Yeah.
getting next
Oh,
month.
thanks
And
for pointing
I
that.
agree with Jim that
Appreciate
that is probably the best summary of the work that has been
It
completed.
provides a foundation for all the things we're talking
Is
about.
that, so that's where those projects came from, on this thing?
this
No.
this is the base
That is
project.
part of a presentation from the 10-year project.
Oh, okay, I understand. That's the new thing.
Yeah.
It's the primary just.
That's the new
part of
thing. We
strategic.
never really made a plan for the old thing, did we? When, was there
What
one?
was the question?
We had a plan for for rehabbing the facility?
We did. So it goes back to 2015, 2014, to the 10-year project plans that we had. And so just real quick on that. The specifically aeration basins, if you look on the right column of the list, those are the big ticket items, if you will. They've been something that we've been working towards since 2014, 2015 for replacement. So we acquired funding in the 2017 bonds. We did design from 2017 to 2019 to replace those. And then the consolidation theory began to come up front, and we weren't going to spend $14 or $15 million to replace those if we were going to move forward to move the plant somewhere else or consolidate. So we stopped that. Those projects are still out there and a high need. So, but with the new replacement, there's no need to go do those unless we delay for a long time. So
It is some of what you're describing in this document here that. Jim is-
I'm not sure that the history of that is in there, but overall, those aeration basins have been something that's been along for a long time. There's been a lot of projects at wastewater plant 1 that got taken off the capital plan because there's no sense in leaving them in there and planning for them when you're not going to do them, because instead you're going to replace.
The information is in that.
Is it?
It is, okay,
In
great.
there?
Very-
And when, you know, I've heard in this meeting and the trustee meeting, there's talk about this big stakeholder thing. Big stakeholder study. Was rehabbing this plant one of the options, or?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so
Yeah,
you
there
got,
were-
that group did look at that.
Multiple, many options, but the rehabilitation and replacement kind of working through versus a new plant, whether it was membrane or conventional, was part of phase 1.
And that's really what this is. This is a summary of that stakeholder meeting that went on
Perfect.
12 to 14.
I look forward to reading it. Look forward to reading it.
Thank you for your presentation. It's good. I know a lot more than I did looking at those 3 pieces of paper. Thank you.
Thank you. Receive and discuss the draft 2025 SJR Woodlands Division budget. Chris, who's going to do that? Okay, Haley.
Welcome for those that are new. I'm with the accounting department at SRA, and so I have the 25 fiscal year 25 budget for y'all today. For the Bear Branch question earlier, the Woodlands division is just part of SRA. But this budget is just for Woodlands that all interact with. It's not our whole budget. So just a quick timeline, a calendar of events. So we're here in May to present it, and then in June, we'll be back for questions. And then in July, we'll ask for y'all's vote to direct your trustee to vote at our August, or not our August, y'all's August trustee meeting. And then our board will vote on the budget in August. So vote from y'all in July at the HUD levels. Big thing. So in y'all's packet, you have the budget presentation. Or less. And then behind the presentation, you'll see our draft budget in there. So, first slide of the presentation. In the interest of time, I'm going to just do the highlights for the first two slides, which is our rates. But if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. If you want the full presentation, I'm happy to give it as well. Yeah, you got a question, already?
Of course. I think, first, I want to tell you, I think you did a good job of pulling out the critical things in the budget. I really did. You can make a million slides, but you really got most of them. I go, oh yeah, I want to know more about that. So good job. Really appreciate it.
There is a slide at the end that I won't go over, but it's there for y'all. It does show kind of the theory of how we pull out the slides, and it is a slide that shows everything in our budget that changed by 50,000 plus or minus, and then the percent plus or minus, and that's kind of, there's a thing in there about painting and joking. It doesn't really make a good slide, but it's out there, so that budget's changing because we didn't do it last year, so we're doing it this year. Type of thing that we put on that slide there at the end. So the first slide here is about our water and wastewater rates. So we have 3 rates in the Woodland that our SRA charges to the MUDs. The first 2 are on this slide, which is our wholesale water rate and our wholesale wastewater rate. So the water rate, we are proposing to drop it 2%, which is 5 cents, to a rate of $2.73 per 1,000 gallons. And on the wastewater rate, we're proposing to keep it the same as FY24 at $5.65 per 1,000 gallons. The third rate that we charge that I'm sure y'all have seen or heard, it's got some different names, but on y'all's bill, it's the surface water conversion fee. So we call it a pass-through fee, as a blended rate, or the surface water conversion. All of those are the same rate, and that's the third rate that we have that we charge the MUDs. This rate, we are proposing to drop it from $3.20 to $2.97. This is directly related to GRP dropping their fees, and so we're able to pass that savings down through the pass-through fee. So it's the same. One thing to note on the GRP rate is the review committee has not seen this, so it's subject to change, and they will see it next week. So probably a sneak peek on the GRP rates that we're proposing there. I was just gonna hit the highlights.
47.
Oh,
You ready? Oh, I don't know. I see the R&R fund talked a lot. I mentioned, but I don't know what it is and what's the $6 million.
Yes, so the R&R fund, it stands for Repair and Replacement Fund. So the budget that we have here that we're mostly talking about is the operating budget for Woodlands. In our operating budget, we do a transfer to the R&R fund, and we're proposing a $6 million transfer, and that $6 million in that R&R fund goes back to that project plan that they were telling me about, that 10-year plan. There's most of the projects on here are either R&R funded or bond funded, but the R&R projects are funded by this transfer that we do every year.
So would that have been something that this maintenance thing would have, facility number 1 would have gotten some of that money, or no, it's something different?
Potentially, it depends on some of those projects were in the project plan to be cash funded R&R.
Yeah, back in the past.
In the past, correct. Going forward, there's no funding source for those projects currently.
Gotcha.
In terms of the water loss assumption, is that due to some action that has been taken to drive that down, or is that just kind of a serendipity?
So it is water loss that we're able to account for where the water goes more because of the AMI meters that.
That's what I'm waiting to hear.
I was impressed when I heard those numbers, the results, man. I didn't know why they were doing it when it would come to my house.
We
That was great.
predicted years ago when we embarked on this project that eventually it would help lower or stabilize the wholesale water rates, and here we are.
There you go. Well done.
Chris, with respect to the 4% loss, you go to page 21 in your presentation, that rolling year is 4.8%. And the last discussion we had, you said you were going to go back and take a look at it to make sure we can support the 4%.
Correct. So what I'm passing around, what I've asked to be passed around right now is the water loss that I've passed out to another mud after taking a look at it and seeing what the numbers are. I will tell you, the 4% is aggressive. It is not 4.8, but what you're looking at is typically I'd like a little bit more conservativeness in there. So I'd go 4.5, 5, 5.5. But if you look at our monthly financials, when you can see them again, you'll see that we're currently over revenue. So we've made more money this year at a higher water loss. And so I went back and said, okay, we're making more than we budgeted at a 5.5% water loss. I'm seeing 4.8 that you see in the report. So I go back and I pull it by fiscal year, not by rolling average. And so what you're looking at here, and forgive the colors, I'm not sure what I was doing. You can see the actual where it says like FY19 all the way through FY23. Those are actual, right? So that's actual water loss for the fiscal year. FY24 budget is in green at 5.5%. FY24 year to date is at 3.54. The 2-year average is at 3.85%. And so I know we had a drought for the last couple of years. And so when I've reviewed the numbers separately, I've come up with these numbers based on fiscal year instead of the rolling 12-month average. The bottom half of this was me looking to see, okay, how aggressive do I want to be with the water loss itself? So 4% is aggressive. I'll give you that entirely. But I also do not want to charge each month for, potential water loss that may or may not be there and inflate the rate slightly. Especially with the last couple of years, we have had excess funds at the end of the year, mostly due to drought. But at the same point in time, we're not currently in a drought, and I still have additional revenues coming in on the water side.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions on the?
Oh, thank you. Oh, no. 51. What's the difference between direct and indirect on your FTEs?
Yes, so indirect, the question that's getting brought up. First off, clarify that it is all employees. We don't put contractors in our staff.
Not contractors.
So it's all
Okay.
employees, just to start. So the second part of that is direct employees are ones that work directly under Chris in our Woodlands division. Indirect is anything that's somebody's allocating their time to the Woodlands, so like accounting, PSD, IT, anybody that's allocating their time.
Do they do timesheets up there or how do they allocate?
Yes, so they do, some are on timesheets and some are on, basis, but for the most part, they do timesheets every 2 weeks and submit it on where they spend their
Thank
time.
you.
Can you give us a schedule on the Bear Branch budget? And that's for the 4 or 5 months that are affected by that.
You're asking for an update on Bear Branch right now?
The Bear Branch budget.
I think we'll be bringing that in the next couple of months. We don't have it ready to present, done. My recollection is it's normally July, August, that we start presenting it so that Woodland Water has a chance to build that into their budget.
Hey, before you go, page 55. Group insurance, that's skyrocketed. Your number of employees isn't going up. So what happened?
So, we thought the same thing, so we looked at it and we ran it down because we did think that it was going up quite a bit, but it is explainable once we got down into the detail of it. But I do agree it did stand out a bit. So we were told by SMT, our senior management team at SURA, that our health insurance, the budget assumption was to increase it 10% because of costs that they were anticipating. So that's the first hurdle of it is 10%. And then the second hurdle is we've had a few employees that are currently employed at SURA that did not elect to have health insurance in the past. And then this year they've decided to have health insurance. at Full Family. So now we've got at least 2 employees that now have insurance for Full Family insurance. So we've got to add that into the budget for next year. And then the third layer is any vacancies that we have. So we've increased our FTE. So when we increase the FTEs, they started, yes, we have increased the indirect FTEs. So when we increase them, they start as vacancies because we don't have somebody. And then we also have 5 vacancies in total that allocate to the Woodlands. And we budget our vacancies at Full Family because we don't know who we're
Sure.
going to hire.
And then you have the 2 that weren't there, so that's like an FTE increase too. Okay,
Yes,
got it.
yes, on the insurance.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
And very briefly, what are the lobbyists, whether their function?
Lobby.
Engaged at y'all's, at the direction of WBA and the MUDs to engage in the lobbyists, but they are helping us secure funding at different
Federal and
rates.
state level.
Yeah. But secure funding and interest rates and grants and all that associated with it.
You may have read last year that we received $3.6 million for Bear Branch Dam.
Oh, yeah, through
That
with
was-
Crenshaw.
That was
yeah.
through this lobbyist
Okay.
to do. Those were improvements. We've also, that was through Crenshaw's office on federal level. And then I think it's 1.8 or so additional for a lift station 24 as well.
Okay.
So we continue to work with them to try to see where we can find funding options to fund some of these things,
Yeah.
both on the state and the federal level.
Yeah.
We've had some pretty good success.
Yeah, that's good money spent,
Sounds like,
right?
sounds like a good payout for money.
Oh, yes. And this looks like it's an increase. It's actually a decrease per month because we finished out the previous contract, which crossed over budget years. So the price per month is actually going down for them. It was 10,000 one now.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you.
And one last question on 51. I'm sorry, I missed it. The 6% merit and promotion. Is that state driven? Is that local driven? Who comes up with the 6%?
That's policy, or not policy, but it's internal edge, right? That's the senior management budget assumption.
Is there a cost escalator or CPI index to the employees or is this everything?
That's everything. There's no cost of living, anything else.
Yeah, yeah, inflation the way it is. Yeah, that's why I was asking. Thank you.
No, it's not also a straight 6% across. It's based off performance, and everything.
Nope. Good number. Anything else? No of. Anyway, good stuff. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Received update regarding status of Bear Branch, Panther Branch, and Research Forest Drive Drainage Improvement Project. Authorize any action.
Have a maintenance memo on Bear Branch. So for the new directors, there are 5 MUDs that pay for the maintenance on Bear Branch. It's MUD 7, 46, 47, 60, and 67. You all are one of those. Excuse me, let me back up a minute. My name's Ed Shackelford. I'm Director of Operations, which has Woodlands Division, GRP Division, Flood Management, Highlands Division, and Lake Conroe Division. So three of the divisions that touch you all. So back to Bear Branch. Bear Branch is under Lake Conroe Division. It is a separate budget because it is funded only by 5 MUDs versus all 10. Bear Branch Dam, which is the project that Congressman Crenshaw was able to get some money for. The balance of that cost is paid for by the 5 MUDs. It is currently in preliminary engineering, and it is to rehabilitate the existing structure and also to rebuild the service outlet. And that project is underway. The other project, the Bear Branch, Panther Branch Drainage Study, that was initiated a long time ago, started kind of going back to Tropical Storm Allison, Hurricane Allison in 2001. The engineers that helped MUD 67 with drainage, LJA Engineering, submitted an application to the Water Development Board, secured some grant money and some zero interest loan money. And between the 5 MUDs that do Bear Branch maintenance and Metro MUD, there is a study going on to determine if it's possible to lower the water surface elevation in Bear Branch and Panther Branch during extreme events, mainly to get water off of major thoroughfares and collectors. And then, and try to get some water out of homes. So the study, we've gotten modeling results. We got a cost estimate about a month and a half ago. Cost estimate exceeds the monies available. We've been talking with the consultant about how they prepared their cost estimate. We've gotten that information. We meet with Eric on Teams meeting tomorrow to go over the results of the cost estimate and what our next steps are. And then we will come to you all with more information.
I just said home flooding. Can you give me a scale of how many homes are at risk here? I know the roads do, but I didn't know much about the homes.
Paul, do you remember? Or Jim?
Oh,
20?
One's too
One
many.
across from the house.
4 or 5 on a regular basis, another 15 or 20, depending on the storm intensity and drainage area.
Somewhere across from the high school and in Capstone.
Right in there, yeah.
Okay, Capstone.
And then the road floods, if I remember correctly, the road over Research Forest floods it,
Yeah.
doesn't it? That's can't be safe with the fire department.
And
so-
part of the goal is to get water down, either lower it or get it off the research forest completely.
Thanks.
Other questions about Bear Branch? And then this report kind of tells you what maintenance we've done over the last month. A question came up in a recent mud meeting about how Bear Branch did during the recent storms. We have game cameras out there that we monitor. And we caught a couple of kids wakeboarding on the flows.
No.
Yeah.
You have video?
Yes, we do.
Oh, that is.
But a regular occurrence is people cutting the fence and graffiti on the deck. Other questions? Thank y'all.
Thanks, Ed. Thank you. Ryan?
Nothing in the attorney's report.
What exactly is attorney's report?
That's if there's something of a general nature that I need to report on. It's
Yeah. I have a question for you because I got to watch the MUD 47 meetings. And there's some pretty significant issues going on with regards to the agreement. The SJ River Authority agreement between the MUDs and the $40 million project. Are you going to report to this MUD on that?
That's a MUD 47. That's a MUD 47
Well,
map.
I heard you clearly say that that's going to affect all the MUDs.
Right now, can't discuss what's discussed in closed session with that particular.
Well, I didn't know. I was just going from, I didn't hear the closed section. I heard the, do we have a closed session scheduled for that? You could address that to us?
Well, I have attorney-client privilege with each district, so I can't.
But I can ask, you're correct, but you know the boundary. So like if we went to closed session, we could at least ask you questions. If you don't want to answer, you don't need to, right? You wouldn't.
Well, I have to be clear that I can't speak to anything that's discussed in a MUD 47 closed session. So
Correct. I know. I appreciate that. I wouldn't, and I'm not asking to do that, but what was said in the general meeting was also equally important. I don't know if these gentlemen are aware of it, and I think we need to discuss it.
Well, so what was talked about in open session, there's no need for us to go into closed session for that.
Well, there may be. I'm requesting one.
Yeah, you are the one, yeah.
Because I'd like to hear from you on that. Thank you.
Pete, General Manager.
Yes. All right, a few items. First off, wanted to talk a little bit about the storm a couple weeks ago. The Woodlands overall fared very well as far as any home flooding. The only home flooding we're aware of at this moment is a couple homes on the very north end of Roberts Landing and 39. They're back up to River Plantation. Other than that, everything fared very well. There are a few hot spots. We call them around the Woodlands. Capstone's one, across from the high school is another. Those fared well. Obviously, there was some street flooding. A lot of folks don't understand street flooding is the streets are designed to flood. A lot of folks don't understand that in those really extreme events. So that did occur in that area for a short period, and then when the rains subsided, it started to slowly get there. But everything fared pretty well. What did not fare well, I suppose, is some damage that occurred at water plant number 3. So water plant number 3 was hit by lightning during the storm. And if just for reference, water plant number 3 is kind of on that map in that at the very top of that square that's kind of a cutout in 47. Water plant 3 is generally in that area. And when the lightning struck, it hit or disabled the disinfection system in the open position. And then disabled the sensors to tell us that, or tell SGRA that it was open. And so, as you can imagine, from that kind of center point, chlorine, was injected in the system as it normally does, but at a greater rate than normal. So once we determined that that was occurring, we partnered with SGRA to get all hands on deck, basically to go in that area and start flushing the system. So there were a lot of fire hydrants open during that time. On Monday, we sent out a public notice to everyone using our WaterSmart notification system. That was opened by 83% of the residents.
Wow.
They received it. That was amazing. Very good open rate. And we started on Monday. By about midday Tuesday, we had about 95% of the elevated chlorine out of the system through the flushing and tank emptying. And then we finished up that evening in a couple of minor spots up there. It only affected the northern portion of the Woodlands. The Woodlands is separated into 3 different zones, pressure zones. And so it didn't really get too much far past kind of the midway point of that 60-47, kind of right in the middle. That's kind of the top edge of bottom edge of zone 1 and zone 2 right there. So pretty much stayed on the north section. So it did affect y'all for sure. And but through cooperation with both agencies, we knocked it out very quickly. So that was very well.
How much did that loss cost?
We won't know at this point yet. I think the estimate right now that SGRA reported was about 15 million gallons of water was lost. So we can work through that.
Conversion to that.
Yeah.
And we're doing something, backup systems or some other remedy so it doesn't happen again?
I believe SGRA, well,
I don't know.
yeah, you can't prevent lightning from hitting it necessarily, but
No, but maybe have redundant systems.
sure, there are redundant systems.
Oh, they both went out?
Mhm.
Oh dear.
Right,
Double redundant?
right. So
Okay.
SGRA, my understanding is putting some additional safeguards in place for getting folks out there during the weekends and different things, so they can hopefully catch it a little quicker.
Or procedural.
That's it.
And sensors in the system.
That's right. Something else I wanted to report is we will be conducting a new director orientation on, it'll be either or June 5th or June 10th. And so any new director, you're welcome to identify whether or not you could make either one of those. And there'll probably be a mid-morning on those days leading into a lunch. We'll have lunch in, and then we'll talk about, what are MUDs, what's the WWA, our role, your role, kind of some things that have been going on. And then my understanding is SGRA will have something similar, an orientation to really focus more on the infrastructure and some of the 10-year plan, some of these bigger projects that you've heard a lot about. So, and then I believe as part of that, whether it's that day or not, on the SGRA portion, there'll most likely be an opportunity for folks to do a tour of the wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah, that's very critical. Cool, thanks.
All right, thank you.
We did talk earlier about the GRP refund and I pointed to where that was. I did want to give you an update on the drought contingency plan and the water conservation plan. We mentioned last month that those were due May 1. Those were submitted. We need to get confirmation that they were received and accepted and approved. So that's been buttoned up and good to go. Also, the LCRR lead copper rule revision that, if you recall, is related to the national mandate by the EPA to identify by October of this year, we need to identify within the system, both on the public side and the customer side of the meter, what the type of water pipe is. And so we will be doing that, conducting that study. We've been working with a consultant for the last 6 months or so to start building that inventory that will be needed. Luckily, we've been fighting real hard to work with the EPA and TCQ. It looks like we have a couple of employees that have been here 45 years that actually put those lines in. And so,
Resource.
yeah, the EPA and TCQ will will actually accept affidavits and testimony that they did see that and that wasn't lead pipe. Just so you know, lead pipe was generally outlawed in around 88 or so. And so we're really talking about the homes and users that are pre those dates, which there's about 9,000, give or take, that affects that we need to confirm. If we cannot confirm the affidavit or whatever, then we're gonna need to dig a hole on both sides of the meter, identify the type of pipe going into the meter, and identify the type going out of the meter, going to the home. So we'll need to do that. That will have a cost, but hopefully we can minimize that. I believe we can with the affidavit. So we're happy about that. And let's see, John does have a comms report, communications report on Orion Time. And I know, Paul, you wanted to hear a little bit about the software changes. So would you like to hear that?
I think there's a page here in the packet, isn't it?
We did. Do you have any other additional comments or questions?
Wondered if there were anything in the savings assumptions that has changed from the original. Have things gotten better, stayed the same, gotten worse in terms of savings?
So we reported a couple months ago that we needed to do the data migration. We hired that consultant. That was reported probably in March, I think. That was the main change.
But you haven't identified any drivers that are causing you heartburn?
Not at this point.
Live will be September 9th, so hopefully from there on out, we'll see some savings. Merchant processing, hopefully, some other things.
Anything else, Pete?
I think that'll do it.
Paul, trustees report?
I don't have anything to add. What's in here?
I would suggest that we defer the closed session to next month since we need to have the next board meeting in there.
You know, I didn't know we had a time limit. Do we?
Well, the next board has.
Well, I don't know what to tell. I think we need at least 10 minutes together. I want to be insistent if I can. There's some sort of significant issues happening with the supplemental agreement. I think we need to talk about it.
Does it affect us?
Yes.
It's up to the board if y'all want to go into closed session.
Does the issue affect us?
This board has approved the supplemental agreement with the River Authority that was presented. MUD 47 has not.
Okay. So are they the only one?
No. There are
Okay.
two others.
And
And none of that's confidential.
no, I know. If you want to have an open conversation, I'm more than willing. I don't know that it's, I will be, what has happened is MUD 47 and the meeting that I watched today, I watched it this morning. They had it yesterday evening. They were one of the three MUDs that did not approve the supplemental agreement or the $40 million. And in a very good conversation yesterday in MUD 47, they pointed out the problems with the supplemental agreement. I don't know that has everybody here read the supplemental agreement? And you went through and you understood it? You had all the old contracts that are referred to? Well, MUD 47, I think some other MUDs found the supplemental agreement to be deficient in significant ways. And I'm not sure that we made the right decision. I wasn't here, so I'm not accusing anybody, but I think there's a lot more information about what the supplemental agreement should have going forward so that the MUDs actually have a little more say in the deliverables.
Is that something we could put on an agenda for next month, just to talk about this?
And that was actually my goal. I appreciate that.
Yeah, let's do-
My goal was to put on the agenda a discussion and possible rescindance of our approval on that project. We have not, as I understand it, it hasn't been signed, and this board can make a motion or can revert its own decision. And I'd like to put that on the agenda. We won't have to do it, but I'd like to
discuss it.
Yeah.
I support that.
If they-
No, that's a way to avoid, that's a great solution to avoid more lengthy discussion.
We can have that on the agenda. I think part of that discussion will need to be in closed session to your point.
You know better than I do, Brian. I don't know.
We can put that on.
Oh, you get that? Okay.
Yeah, so there'll be an item on there to consider rescinding the previous approval.
No, consider discussing it.
Well, consider and as possible. I want to include that verbiage in the agenda.
Yeah, we worked that with the attorney. No.
Are there any other items for future agendas? Anybody else? If not, the meeting stands adjourned.